And boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm ForClassic and welcome to BenchART. So for today what I do have in here is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, a game developed by Binox and Vicarious Visions. So Binox, it is well known on Activision, and Vicarious Visions were the latest title that they ported was Crash Bandicoot Trilogy, so it includes all the titles. So we have again something similar, but this time Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and this is the graphical settings that I do recommend you to go with if you have an Nvidia MX 130 with GDDR5 or an Nvidia GT 940 MX GDDR5. So first let's start with the graphical settings, and as you can see, this is pretty much the typical requirements that all the Unreal Engine games have. So it's pretty much an i3 CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and a GTX 660 or an AMD Radeon HD 7950. So our graphic card in here, it is much worse than what it is listed in here. So I decided to test the game with multiple different settings. So at 720p I decided to test the game with all the presets available. So the minimum settings, it was what provided the closest experience to be above 60 frames per second, and thus that's the settings that I decided to use. The low settings still have an average above 60, but the 1% low drops to 40. Median, high and maximum did provide an experience above 30 frames per second. Jumping on to 900p, playing on median or on low provides an experience above 30 frames per second. Median settings, the average was 40, but I already started to notice some drops below 30 frames per second. So at 900p, I do recommend you to go with minimum. As for 1080p, the minimum settings also drops below 30 frames per second, despite the average it is 47. So very nice results in here. So let's wrap all these things together. So all the settings runs at 30 frames per second that I did test out, aside from 1080p minimum or above or 900p median or above. All the rest of the settings just plays above 30 frames per second, and I decided to go again with 720p using the minimum settings. So with all the settings that I decided to test, why I decided to go with the minimum possible? So mostly because this game, it is very fast, and I really think that you should have 60 frames per second or at least as much as possible in this game specifically, alright? Because this is a very fast paced game, and sometimes when you are landing your tricks on the floor, the frame rate feels like that it matters, because it's a matter of a split second, and if you fail to just stop the trick or just, you know, put the skates in a good position of landing, all this thing in a split second makes very tough to play at frame rates under 60 frames per second. So that's why I decided to be as close as possible. And not only that, usually I don't play games at minimum settings, alright, only when we don't have any other chance to do it. But the thing is, this game at minimum settings, it looks awesome. Alright, this is the visuals with the minimum settings. It looks really good. I think it's quite surprising. In fact, I was expecting something really bad in that regard, but honestly it just looks very good, performs awesomely, and yeah, that's pretty good for the MX130. But now that we talked a little bit about the performance, let's talk a little bit more about the game. This game has been really well received on Metacritic, so the score, it is 88 from 0 to 100. I think it is insane, but it really shows us that this game, it is very well done. The user score, it is even better with 9.3 of score. So I really enjoyed it. When I started to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I started with the third installment, so I never played the first two titles, but I knew that the first two titles had a limitation of time on the maps, and this is the same way that it works. So when you start this level, for example the warehouse, which I'm actually playing in here, the warehouse have a lot of objectives which you need to do, and you have 2 minutes, so you don't really need to complete all of the objectives, alright, but you need to complete at least one so that it gets completed forever. For example, one of the objectives, it is for you to collect the words skates from skate. I mean, And if you collect that objective, it never shows you off to you again in the map. So you no longer see the letters on the map because you already completed the objective. So to unlock the next levels, yes, you heard it right, it is unlocked, because when you start the game, you just have the warehouse from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and also the warehouse from, not the warehouse, I guess the hangar from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And to unlock the rest of the maps, you need to at least complete 1 or 2, I think it is 3 or 4 objectives to unlock the next map. So every time you start, the game even gives you some hints how to complete those objectives. So pretty good stuff. I really like the challenges because it gives you a reason to play the game. But if you are asking yourself if you can free ride throughout the maps or the levels, yes you can. There is a mode which you can select in game, which allows you to just free travel through the maps without any time limits. But obviously you can't do any objectives in there, so the objectives get completely disabled. If you want to complete the objectives, you need to go through the challenge of the 2 minutes. The game even supports online, and I think one of the biggest features of the game, it is really a map editor in game, which means that you can create your own parks and have an unlimited fun. I think that is insane. A lot of games have been adding this kind of stuff, and I think for people that really love Tony Hawk's and want to create custom parks, I think it is a huge deal in my opinion. Especially because we didn't add a good Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game in years, because the latest installments were really a crap, honestly. So what more can I tell? So the soundtrack, it is really a love letter to all the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater fans. It includes titles from the genre of the old times, alright, so it is really good, but also includes some new tracks, which actually gets in here in this theme really well. So I really enjoy the soundtrack, and I should advise you to go to Google and check it out, the soundtrack of this game. I really think it is a huge love letter to the old Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, because you clearly see that these guys know what the hell they are doing with this title. So this is a remake, alright, not a remaster, despite the maps are the same and were recreated using more or less the same layers. It is still none of the less, alright, a remake, because it was rebuilt from the ground up, and there are a couple of changes which makes this game different from the first installment, and includes the 2 games. So I think it is awesome. Unfortunately for many people, this game you won't be able to buy this game through Steam at first, because this is a Epic Store exclusive, and unfortunately it isn't really that cheap either. So this game costs you $44.99. There is also a deluxe edition which costs you $54.99, which includes the Reaper Skater, unique retro outfits, yes, because you have customizations in here, but it's just skins, you know, you don't really unlock any new map or anything like it, you just get outfits and different skates, so I don't think it is a huge deal. The game costs $44.99, it is close to a full price game, but still, this is 2 games inside of 1, and includes online, and includes create your own park, includes an awesome soundtrack. I think it is very good. It is expensive, yes, but it is incredibly well optimized, which is very good. The title works pretty well with no issues whatsoever. I really think it is amazing. Vicarious Visions and Binox really have done a great job with this title. So finally, a good Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game. Alright guys, so I think that's all that I want to talk about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2. I'm still a noob on this, but in case you want to check the rest of the gameplay, feel free to do it, because I'm going to shut up. Thank you a lot for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.